Welcome back, everyone, to the Blemmings Labs. I am delighted, as always, but particularly delighted to introduce our next speaker, Toby Bellwood. I've known Toby we were just trying to figure out, I think about 9 years-ish, but it's been really great to see the continued work he's doing around open source and open government. So Toby's going to be talking to us about the business value of open source, more than just publishing source code. Toby is the product lead at Amazy.io, who provide managed container hosting based on their open source application delivery platform, Lagoon. Prior to joining Amazy.io, Toby was the tech lead for GovCMS, Data.gov.au, and nationalmap.gov.au. Just quickly, if everyone can remember to please post your questions into the question tab on the Blemmings Lab in Venulus, and let us know if you have any issues doing so on the chat in there. I'll hand over to you, Toby. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Pia. Yeah, here's my my intro, pretty much read verbatim. The only difference at the bottom is that I've admitted to being a long-time self-confessed open nerd. Yeah, Pia and I were just talking and working out how long we go back, and it's certainly 8 or 9 years. And as Pia pointed out, yes, I was the tech lead for Data.gov.au and National Map. Pia gave me a 2-week handover when she went on maternity leave, and I have to say that was one of the most stressful fortnights of my entire life, trying to download everything Pia knows in a fortnight. So it's a real pleasure to be reunited with Pia in this virtual session. So what I'm going to do today is talk about the business value of open source. I really, I apologize for being a little bit clickbaity on the business value side of things. I'm going to be talking to you, not necessarily, I'm going to have lots of pie charts and spreadsheets about plus X million dollars or bottom line up 50%. I'm going to be talking more about how we as Amazy.io are a company that really values open source, why we do that, how we do that, and what we've seen from a business point of view, what the benefits of that have been for us. Not just in keeping our business afloat and alive, but recruiting and retaining quality talent. So staff, every member of our team, but also how we recruit and retain customers. We look to customers who have a similar ethos to we do. So we'll sort of talk a little bit how we try and demonstrate some of that. So Amazy.io, managed service provider, we've got an enterprise grade container hosting platform. And we do that using an open source application delivery platform called Lagoon. So I'll go a little bit into some technicals, but most of it will sort of stick to the stuff that 99.5% of the world actually understands. Amazy.io has been around for 10 years. It spun out of a sister company, Amazy Labs, and the need for high performance, high security hosting is one that wasn't going away, and it wasn't solved by any of the other vendors. So we decided to make this tool ourselves, fully open source. We're big contributors to the open source communities. We've got customers across all fields. We're most well known in Australia for hosting the GovCMS platform, the Victorian Single Digital Presence platform, but elsewhere in the world there's banks and pharmaceuticals and healthcare and finance and media and all the sectors basically. Lagoon, the tool that we built and we open sourced, it's the way that we automate Kubernetes installs, because Kubernetes is really hard. Kubernetes is difficult to run at scale and difficult to configure properly. So we've built a tool that helps people do that. Token topology slide, don't worry about reading it too much, but basically developers do stuff, Git does stuff, and Lagoon tells Kubernetes to do things, and your site goes on the web and lets you know. Because we're open source, we support any open source framework. So all the PHPs, Drupals, WordPresses, Python, so Django, CCAN, Node.js, MariaDB. We basically can host anything. And we've built a good business out of being able to do all of those open source platforms. So the crux of why we're here, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think makes open and how that open can help businesses, can help companies, can help teams, and go through some of the examples from my time in the trenches, from where I've seen it be beneficial, some of the things that I've learned along the way, and some of the things that I really recommend you go and sort of pay a little bit of attention to. Last year, at Amazing.io, we went through a real open culture phase. We went to the whole team to build a definition of what we thought Amazing.io did. So we came up with purpose, with vision, with mission statements. And you'll notice there's a theme. All of these talk about sharing, they talk about empowering, they talk about trust. But the real mission is to be open, the foremost open hosting company. And that last line, I think, is what's most critical. And that's building collaboratively with our customers. That's one of the great things that open allows you to do. It allows you to collaborate with the people that use your platform. And that collaboration can take multiple different levels. It can go many different ways. As we enter the what some people refer to as that sort of meaning economy, we've gone through, obviously, industrial economy, we've gone through information economy, we're looking at the meaning economy. People are looking at companies to have meaning behind them, to have a story, to have some reason why you should be in business with them. We took this to heart greatly when we looked at not just the way we work, the kind of work we do, the kind of people we work with, and the kind of people we're looking to work with. So as we sort of hit that search for meaning, and that search for meaning is something that's always been around. Shop local's been a thing ever since I remember. Supporting small businesses. These are all the meanings behind why we go to places we go. Why can't other companies buy the same? Why can't the web be the same? Why can't people that we buy our cloud services from, why can't that be the same? And also, I'll talk a little bit later about some of the books that I've read, but a strong current in my reading and my learning on this has been being story driven. You can be competition driven, and you can look at being the best. And we've spoken about in our mission, we talk about being the foremost. Foremost is a very interesting word, but our goals aren't necessarily a competition. We don't want to be number one. We don't want to have year-on-year growth. We do want year-on-year growth, but it's not a specific objective for us. What we're looking at doing is really having the story down of why we are who we are, what makes us us, and what makes people look to us. And so, as I've laid it out, I've talked about culture. I'll talk a little bit about leadership, talk about people, I'll talk about partnerships, and I'll talk about how we learn and share going forwards. So I've put my slides in a different order to the list, which is throwing me a little bit. Leadership is something that everybody does. It's not just the top management. It's not the executive. Everybody is in their own right a leader. You should be looking to be transparent, and transparency is really important in building the trust of those around you, of those you work with. So always be looking for that transparency in decision making, transparency with customers, vendors, suppliers. Suggestion, correction, and embracing failure is such a critical way to operate, to build that kind of open ethos and to build that open platform. If you can't learn from your mistakes and you can't openly learn from your mistakes, you're just going to keep making them. And people are going to know that you're making those mistakes. People, when you have those small occasions when something goes wrong or something doesn't quite, like putting your slides in the wrong order, embrace that. Because it's going to give you a slightly warmer persona. It's going to give you a slightly stronger base to build that open culture on top of. Understand diversity. Diversity is critical in 2021. Having a good understanding of diversity, and this goes beyond diversity training. It goes in your own research. It goes into your own experience, and try and work out what diversity means. And it comes in so many different flavors. It comes in that could be relevant to you, and how to understand it, how to embrace it, and how to really harness diversity to your needs. And this, becoming a lifelong learner. I think Reid Hoffman's podcast talks frequently about being a lifelong learner, that never-ending quest for knowledge, that sort of thirst to learn and pick up more things. That's really, really important in being a leader. Being a leader, whether you're a junior developer looking to work with the rest of your team and demonstrate your skill and your expertise to the rest of your team, or whether you are in a leadership position and you're looking to motivate and encourage and mentor the next generation. People's one of my real passions. I take a great, I take a lot of interest in working out how to get the most out of people, how to use and really watch people flourish. One of the big things we do at Amaze.io is on every one of our job ads, we look for open source. We look for open source as something that people have done. And not everybody in the marketing division or in the sales team or in project management have done open. We talk about it. We talk about it through the interview process. We talk about it through the recruitment process. We want people to feel comfortable with open source. And even if you haven't worked on open source projects before, there's enough literature out there that you can really understand what open source is. And it could be that you've got volunteer experience. You could have donated time. You could have organized conferences. You could have done all this kind of work that has a very similar string to open source. You probably don't have a GitHub profile, but you're really living that open source community mindset. Learning about each other as part of our interview process here. We have an Ask Me Anything phase. After you've gone through the technical interviews and technical assessments, you're basically thrown to the team. And we have sort of a 16 or 20 person Zoom chat with the whole team. And this is our real opportunity to get to know each other, to get to understand, does this person fit? Do they understand us? Are they the kind of person that I'm happy? Well, in the olden days, it would have been to sit next to each other, but we're fully remote. So is this the kind of person that you're interested in learning from, in helping, in sharing with? We are talking about bringing these Ask Me Anythings away from just a pure like recruitment step to being a more scheduled thing. Find out about your coworkers. And I know some people are deliberately private, but there are aspects where you can learn about people professionally. What are people studying? What are their interests? What are they looking at? Where are they going? As something that will bring up the work that people do on side projects. Now we're told throughout a lot of organizations I've worked at that you shouldn't be working after work and you shouldn't be doing all this stuff. That's out of work's your downtime. I'd say the opposite. Encourage people to do these side projects. Not to spend dozens of hours and every waking hour building work stuff. Side projects aren't work stuff. Side projects are stuff that really interest people. If you've got someone who by day is a JavaScript developer and by night is really deep into the Arduino community or loves Raspberry Pi hacking or fiddling with their linux.conf badge, really encourage that. Lean in and give those people the opportunity to talk and to stretch their creative muscles. It's going to give them a better base for having a diverse range of interests. Collaborations. If I've got a number of my team who've looked at other projects, they've done some research, they've found tools that we could use. They've done a little bit of work and went, this might be feasible. Let's bring it to the table and let's see where we can collaborate on that. So bring these ideas forward. Don't let them wallow. If we can build something quick, build something that works and proves a concept, let's do that. There's some really good examples. Netflix is probably one of the sort of foremost. There's a really interesting book that I read this year about Netflix and the way it operates. Netflix has a fairly large open source team, but one of the main things at Netflix is like, back yourself. If you think you've got a good idea, bring it forwards. If you're a manager of someone that's got a good idea, give them the space to run with that idea. Now you've got to work out how much is the appropriate amount of time to spend on that. But anybody at any level of the organization can have an idea. And you want to create an organization where anybody at any level feels comfortable to bring that forwards. They may not even be able to execute it. I know that I can't execute a large portion of the ideas that I have, but I work with people that can. And that idea, that suggestion, that conversation could be the spark that someone else needs to pick it up and run with it. When you have success, reward it, really discuss and share. like share those stories, share the wins, share the highs. You're going to share some lows. There's going to be low points. There's going to be bits where you wonder, where do we go? What did we do with this? But don't let those ideas wallow. Bring them forwards, but help people to understand that the story behind those ideas, whether it's good, whether it's bad, is really important in helping shape your future directions. And that last point is everyone can evangelize. The ability of people to love what they do and to share their love of what they do is one of your greatest assets. And open source, open and platforms, social media give people the ability to talk about what they're doing, why they enjoy it, why it's good, because you never know where that might lead. You never know what connections that might bring, and you never know what other people may discover you because of that. It could be something as simple as a tweet about a project you're working on that gets into the hands of the right person. The right person goes, oh, this company looks like a really cool company. They look like the kind of place that we could really do some work with. So yeah, obligatory slide of a cat, because you can't have a slideshow without a cat in it. The way we approach partnerships. So at Amazee.io, we actively seek out businesses that have a similar way of operating. They're like-minded. So we're looking at open source partners, even if partners aren't open source, but they've got a strong sharing, collaborative community vibe to them. Yeah, let's talk, because we want those partnerships to be two-way. We want to be able to help our partners. And this is from our point of view as a cloud platform. We've got partners in both ways. We've got infrastructure partners who provide us services. We've got software partners whose tools we use. We've also got agency partners who deliver our platform to their users. So we've got partners on both sides. We strongly look for people who operate in a similar fashion, because it's going to make life easier. It's going to make for a better collaboration. And some of the work we've done over the last couple of years with our partners has been really good in that we've co-created a lot of things. In our particular corner of the world, there's a really dominant local development tool called Lando that's chock full of Star Wars puns, but it's a local development environment for Docker. Lagoon needs a local development environment. So we partnered with the team behind Lando to make Lando Lagoon compatible. I don't know how to write Lando. I barely know how to do Lagoon stuff, but I loved being part of this collaboration. The team at Lando have a very similar ethos, very similar work strategy. I built a portion of our platform to integrate with Lando. I know how it works. I know how it works better. The team at Lando know that people at Lagoon know how Lando works. We wrote some of the code, so we understand how it fits. It's really good. When we're looking at partners to deliver, now we've got partners that have helped deploy web all over the world. We're really looking at them to come to us with what they want us to fix. So obviously we've got roadmaps and we've got issues and we've got bug fixes and things, but we're also looking to our delivery partners to help us to bring the next new feature to light. The team at Salsa Digital here in Australia have done some great work with us, delivering features that they need to help serve their customers better. And because of the relationship with us, we can incorporate those features into our product. Everybody can use them. It's open source. That's the way it works. But we can look to our partners to help build in a more timely fashion the parts that we either can't build or don't need to build or haven't got a pressing sort of urgency on. So we can do that. There's also times when we use upstream pieces of functionality. We can, for example, connect to GitLab instances. There's a particular functionality piece in GitLab that was missing. We asked the team at GitLab, do you know this is missing? And they said, yes, it's on for delivery in Q3, whenever. We needed it for a client job. So one of our developers stepped in, learnt Ruby, and built the functionality in GitLab to push back to the GitLab code base to enable us to be able to serve our customers. So this all the way up and down the chain, you've got these co-creation partnerships happening. And that's something that's really unique to open source. And that helps tie you closer to the people you buy from, the people you work with, the people you sell to. So we really encourage all levels to go up and go down and really work together. Celebrating success, it's really simple. It makes my day if I get a shout out in a release note, or if we've helped fix something. Every time we get a little mention from someone else, that's really important. It's really important to keep those partnerships going. Likewise, if one of your partners does something that's really cool, open yourself to it. Jump on board, congratulate them, say well done. Work out how that's going to benefit you. Is it going to benefit your customers as well? Does it appear to your customers like there's one big happy family of people up above? You're not just a little island that people buy from. Your company and your organization and your team is part of a much wider community. That's a really important feel for a customer. Sponsoring your upstream in open source, it's so critical. Yes, a lot of the tools we use are from larger and more established businesses who've got big development classes, big development teams. But equally, there's so many projects up there that require a little bit of assistance. There could be one guy or two people building, toiling. There's tools, Patreon, Open Collective, GitHub sponsors that really allow you to get in there and to give money to keep these projects alive. One of the proposals that we're currently working through is so how do we, as a company, handle upstream sponsorships? Should we just give all our money to one place and let them distribute that? Should we be able to choose? Should we be able to target? Have these conversations, work out how you can target your contributions to best benefit your products. Don't think of it as safeguarding your supply chain. It is from a risk point of view. They've got some kind of, depending on the way the sponsorship works, you may have some ability to influence supply chain, but also think of it as being a common good, thinking of a way of supporting the broader community. Looking at communities to support, because we live in the cloud native space. There's a lot of foundations out there that are set up for projects. The CNCF, the Continuous Delivery Foundation, the Apache Software Foundation. These foundations are run by the organizations that are parts of it. We have team members who sit on the CNCF security meetings. We've participated in some of the community outreach stuff. We're looking to empower more and more of our team to take part in these communities. In Drupal, we've got team members that sit on the diversity inclusion working groups. We're putting people into the security teams. We participate in some of the government working groups. Giving your team the ability to work in these spaces really helps build a broader sense of community for you. Learning and sharing is the most important part of this, I think. And this, particularly as a leader in an organization, this is a leader as opposed to everyone demonstrating leadership, as someone whose job it is to know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and being responsible for the carriage of that story, of the story of our product, the story of our team, the story of our company. It's really important. It's crucially important that everybody understands their product, everybody understands their industry. I probably spend the larger portion of my day reading and learning and researching and understanding. Anybody that's anywhere near any of the Kubernetes mailing lists or has a vaguely related stream on their Twitter feed will see that the landscape shifts so rapidly. Another day, another thing's announced, another thing's changed. There's a better way of doing it. The way that you've been doing it for the last 3 weeks has now been usurped somehow. Trying to stay on top of this is really important. Everybody in the team needs to work out what their level of involvement should be. I don't expect the entire team to spend their entire day learning and researching. As product lead, I've got carriage of the product direction. So I've really got to know that what we're doing is right. I've got to build a gut instinct to understand that we're not going down a path It's going to cause us issues. It's going to lead to technical debt. Understanding your customers and competitors, it's really important. Same as product and industry. Knowing what your customers want, what's happening in your customers' space. Because a lot of the products and the tools that we use are open, they're run by companies that have similar ethos and similar values, it's quite easy to get beyond the one-page press release. We see it all the time. We've all subscribed to those things that give us a very nice, fluffy, this product, and it's going to do this to save the world. I need to know why. I need to know why that's important. I need to know who's using it. And being able to have that vision into those companies and into those customers is really, it gives you an extra level of intelligence to know that you're going the right way. And by being the same way yourself, you're allowing other people that level of insight. So one of the most important things that I love about our corporate website is that all of our team members get a page. You can see who everyone is. You can see what they do. You can see what they look like. There's obviously privacy implications if you're that way, but in an open space, it's really good to know that I am the person that you should be talking to be able to know who my equivalent is at a similar organization, to know that the person that's just reached out to me, to know where they sit and where they live, and to have a little bit of understanding about the way these other organizations operate. And almost for anything you do in cloud space, and this is something that I come across quite a bit, you're unlikely to be the first person to have done this. I've probably got a long list somewhere of questions I've asked on the internet that I thought someone else would have asked before me. They obviously haven't, and that means one of two things. Either I'm a complete innovator sat out there on the edge and I'm doing the coolest thing in the world, or I'm barking up completely the wrong tree and I've got the wrong end of the stick. I think it's a fine line of imposter syndrome, but being brave enough to ask those questions. But by asking those questions, you find out what else is happening. Someone else may have come across this and discounted it. No one else may have thought of this before. And you've actually got a whole rich new avenue to go down. But again, being part of a community where you can ask those questions, being part of a community where you answer those questions is really, really important. And yeah, write, speak, link, think. Writing about the work you do, writing about how you approach problems, exposing your failures, discussing your wins. It really helps give you that little bit of story. It puts more layers to the business you're building. Sharing links, sharing what you think about. And you can do this internally, you can do it externally. Like we've all got 150% better at using Slack in the last 12 months. The number of channels in our corporate Slack that operate 24/7 with people all around the world sharing stuff that they've read about, that they think is relevant, that they think is of a general interest. They've done a lot of this filtering for you. So I can log in the morning and I can see that the team in Switzerland or the team in USA has discovered some fantastic new tool. That's going to be first on my reading list for the morning. Those of you that do so, share those links externally. LinkedIn, Twitter, any of those spaces, they're all fantastic for really sharing what you think about. The whole thought leader thing is a bit, I hate to be thought of as a thought leader because no one wants a deep insight into my thoughts, but being able to create a third dimension, that sort of three-dimensional picture of yourself and your organization and your team, it's going to draw you closer to the kind of people that want to be closer to you. And if you're looking at doing this, you want to be closer to them. So you want to really build that relationship. Myself, I read. I read quite a lot. If you were to ask my family, technically listening to audiobooks isn't reading, but we have a 1-year-old puppy. So I have about an hour and a half every day that I can consume information. I can consume knowledge. Scrolling back through my my lists, I put my books into Goodreads because I find it easy to remember what I've read and where I've read. I read 24 books this year. I think that's the most books I've read since I stopped taking public transport every day. But there's a real diversity in them. Some of them are sort of hardcore business, some of them more tech focused, some of them are sort of a bit more self-helpy. Some of them are really cool because they're about 1980s, 90s video games. But they've got this really broad, the story that comes out of all of these books is so similar. It's all about, there's a lot to learn about teams, and whether you learn about teams from Netflix or whether you learn about teams from the Unicorn Project, or whether you learn about teams from Masters of Doom, which is probably not the best model for building teams, but it's a good read if you enjoy gory 90s shoot 'em ups. But it can really help provide a level of understanding, and you can draw a lot of parallels between the places these people have been and the situations they talk about. And you can really bring that back to the way you operate and the way your team operates and the way your company operates. Technology is a difficult one. I know I'm at linux.conf and I should be sort of super pro, open source all the tools. My advice is to choose tools that promote this collaboration. Choose tools that promoting collaboration is it's a good one inside your team. By default, we use Google Docs, so all people can see their documents and we can collaborate in real time. And particularly, we work as an asynchronous team. So I can see a document I write get edited by people in New Zealand, and then I wake up in the morning and someone in the US has fixed all the typos for me and corrected my use of the Oxford comma. I have switched on that rule now, so I automatically get Oxford commas. So that's taken a whole chunk of work off them. But the tools that promote collaboration with, again, your customers. If your customer is in one place, it doesn't make sense to be somewhere else. And that's why tools like Slack, tools like Zoom are becoming pervasive, because a lot of people know how to use them. They're using them themselves. And having a shared Slack channel between two organizations makes it easier than having one in Slack and one in Teams and one in Discord and one in Spectrum and the 25 apps you need to run. So choosing those tools that promote the collaboration with the people you want to collaborate with, the people you need to collaborate with. From a technology point of view, don't believe that any solution that's right today is right tomorrow, is right next week. So really encourage a level of experimentation. If you come across something that's better, if you come across something that works more closely to what you want to do or where you want to be, do it. Avoiding lock-in obviously helps make it slightly easier to encourage that experimentation. But again, as we come to, that's what we've talked about, partnerships. So we've talked about infrastructure and platform and customer partnerships. Vendor partnerships are equally important. If you want that ethos, the vendors, the people you buy your tools, your software, your hardware from are equally important. And there's a lot of really great companies out there that will help you understand what it is to be a great company. There's a lot to learn from them. And obviously, preferring tools that are open source friendly. I'm going to say open source friendly because not every great tool is open source. Not every open source tool is great. But from our point of view, those last 2 points come really closely together. A similar ethos and being open source friendly, they're really, really closely intertwined for us. So even if the product itself isn't open source, they may do an open source discount, or they may make allowances, or they may open source parts of their tool stack. We've got in the cloud native space, there's some really good examples of companies who are proprietary companies. They've got proprietary platforms, but they've open sourced the components. And this is where foundations like the CNCF and the Continuous Delivery Foundation come in. Large amounts of projects on the CNCF were contributed by proprietary companies. Netflix, Lyft, Uber, obviously Google, Microsoft, IBM. These are all companies that have got huge proprietary business models, but they've got large tool sets that are open source friendly. So we're looking at these, and we're looking at these kind of companies that sort of say which part of our business is which. This is our proprietary business. This is our open source business. That, for me, they've showed that higher level of thinking. They've showed that kind of ethos that we're really looking for as a business. So I'm trying to desperately work out how far I am through. But the key takeaways for me are that really let your company story and culture speak. If you don't know what your company story is, if you've not got a clear read on telling people where you came from, where you're going, why you're going there, have a think about it. Have a really good work about it. There's a few books that I've mentioned in my list that really sort of dig into the story behind businesses. Story Driven by Bernadette Jiwa is a good one. It goes through a lot of examples of the stories behind those companies, because that really gives you a better level of understanding about who you are and why you're there. Empowering your team, it's massively important. We've all worked in places where we don't feel sufficiently empowered, and we know what that feels like. As a leader, it's my responsibility now to help empower the people in my team to be the people they want to be, to go the direction they want to go. Join and participate in your communities. Work out where your communities are. It's not about, don't think of it as a name recognition stuff. The name recognition stuff comes later, obviously, but understanding where everything is at, where things are moving, being part of the moving is massively important towards a proper open source ethos. Give back. Obviously, all the projects that we can, we give back. We make open source. We're currently trying to work out which of our projects for Lagoon are Lagoon specific and which are Kubernetes specific. And we're trying to work out the best way of moving that forwards. If a tool can be made generic, let's make it generic. It's all on our GitHub anyway, but the more generic we make it, the more people can benefit, the more we can give back. Lagoon itself is open source, so people can use and utilize that. But also, if there's other projects, now I checked through, we've contributed to at least 15 upstream projects in the last 12 months. And they're big ones, some of the big ones, sort of, I think Helm, we've got some stuff with Helm, GitLab, Lando, Drupal, the Fastly project, down to some really small, really niche ones. It could just be that we're reviewing PRs for someone else that we've got a vested interest in, but really look at giving back to those businesses and those companies. And then keep on learning. It's really important to keep learning, keep striving to be better, to understand more. Open will come. Open source will come. I deliberately trying to work out. Becoming an open organization, becoming a more open team, it's a gradual journey. I deliberately said it's not about publishing source code. The second you publish source code, you don't become an open source organization. There's a whole lot of steps other than that. That's what I'm trying to cover. That's what I'm trying to really unpack for people. Really make you understand that there's a whole culture, there's a whole ethos behind that in making your organization open and making your team open. So I think we've got a few minutes to go. So I think Pia is going to be able to ask some questions. But likewise, reach out to me on the interwebs. I've got a fairly unique name.
Thank you so much, Toby. That was really great presentation, and I think went into a lot of areas that people didn't expect just from the title and the initial description. But that's really, really great. It's spurred a lot of conversations. I've got some questions for you from the group. The first one I think you'll be somewhat amused by is a few people actually asked if they could get a copy of the presentation to reuse it, with credit to you, obviously. But I think people really took from the team aspects and the culture aspects of this and how to actually support and empower teams. Definitely. I'll post a link afterwards. Wonderful. Thank you. There's a question that's quite specific. Are you familiar with Mary Thingvall's book, The Business Value of Developer Relations? And if so, how do you relate your lessons to hers? I've just posted a link to that now. Oh, I'm not familiar with it, but as soon as this finishes, I'm going to add it to my list of things to read this year. Developer relations is something that's massively important from our point of view. So yeah, I'm following on with my information omnivore. I'll take any recommendations. So I'm going to go and read that. I'll come back next year and tell you. Wonderful. Just quickly, a question that I thought might be helpful to ask. How do you find balancing, if you like, the expectations and cultures of different disciplines? Because obviously every discipline has their own sort of culture. And when you start to get cross-disciplinary teams, then you get a bit of a cultural friction amongst them. How do you find balancing that?
That's one of the things about knowing your team and knowing each other and understanding what makes people tick. Yes, we're primarily a developer-driven organization. I'm nowhere near the level of the developers that we work with, but likewise, we've got communications, we've got marketing, we've got sales teams. We're trying to find what that medium is and what makes people tick, and how open source thinking applies to a marketing specialist or to a communications or to sales, not just a pure pushing code and watching a GitHub stars space thing. It's trying to understand what success looks like and why, like we talk about those success stories. Why is this a big thing? Why is it important? Like I'll come on and I'll tell my wife that so-and-so retweeted my tweet, and she's like, who is that? I know they're important to you, so I figure this is a big thing, but I'm going to understand that I don't need to know the full details. I just need to know this is important to you. So yeah, trying to understand a little bit of other people's mindset and that little bit of empathy. I know there's been a few talks around linux.conf about sort of empathy, but really having a level of empathy for the people we work with and trying to work out what their levels look like.
And I guess what those shared goals are too, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Knowing what success looks like for other people, I think, will help give an idea of those shared goals.
We have another question about any story you can share where openness went wrong, and if so, what you learned for the future. We might be going back to some of our shared work together. Go ahead.
I think like one of the funnest things we like to do is share those. For those that are familiar with Git workflows, you can squash your Git commit history, so you can push all the things you want to into your Git repo and then close it down. You squash it and it looks neat and tidy. It looks like everything did everything in one pass. We really like to embrace the many mysticisms of trying to get it right. Really, so it's not necessarily that it went wrong, but we like to embrace the full disclosure. And yeah, in one of my Git repos, there's about 18 commits where I'm like, this is the last one. No, surely this is the last one. Okay, I'm going to bed. I can't go to bed if it's broken. I'll fix this in the morning, fix it now. Really embedding that in and really pushing that forwards. In terms of openness going wrong, like the worst that can happen from our point of view is that we overshare, like sharing secrets. It's not a great space to be in. We've obviously got protections in there. We try and make sure that we don't share secret keys and stuff like that, because that's not a great place to be in, having to replace all of your SSH keys. But acknowledging that can happen, trying to work out how to stop it from happening in future, putting measures in place. Like I've got lots of stories about openness gone wrong. Not all of them are probably appropriate for this talk, but yeah, at a small scale, don't worry about things going wrong. Don't worry about things going wrong. Worry about how you deal with them afterwards. Lessons learned, massively important.
I think there's something interesting there about proportionality as well. If the worst that could happen is not that big a deal, then the mitigation shouldn't be that dramatic. And sometimes the worst that can happen is a huge deal, and so you should be proportionally responsive.
Yeah, dig back on our government careers and do some risk matrices, and it's we've got slightly more flexibility with the kind of work that we're doing, obviously, depending on what the sharing or what the openness relates to. But if it's just computer code, you're not going to go far wrong. The worst you're going to open yourself up to is ridicule. Lots of public ridicule.
So I guess with the business side, what do you find works best with your clients, with your customers? What messages about the openness of the culture and the approach that the company's taking best resonates with them?
The whole way through, I've talked about finding like-minded organizations, finding like-minded partners, customers, having the level of access to us that they have, I think, is what resonates the most. Yes, they can read our code base. I had a new starter last week who described our code base as looking at the Christmas lights after they've been in a box for 12 months. They switch on, they all work, but getting onto the tree is a whole different aspect. But those that understand can see our code base. But having access to the people that built that, from all the way from the CEO down to junior developers, I think that's one thing that our customers really appreciate. If they're asking a question about, is this feature available, and they get the answer from me, that means a lot. It means a lot, because the product lead is the one that said, yes, we're doing that. Yes, we're not doing that. Yep, I'll bring that forwards. If we end up, our CTO spends an incredible amount of time responding to client inquiries. That's the sort of thing that really makes our customers know that we respect and value them as an organization, because he's aware of this. He's living, he's sharing. So yeah, that well, I don't want to say radical transparency, because that seems a little overstating it, but being able to have the level of access to an organization is really important for a lot of our customers. They know that they can call me and they can put an hour in my calendar to talk about what they want to see. They can put half an hour in our CEO's calendar and ask him questions. So
we'll have to leave it there. Sorry, we've run out of time, but thank you so much, Toby, for sharing that with us, and we really appreciate you being able to share the resource for people to reuse. For everyone, if you've got follow-up questions or discussion that you'd like to have, please catch Toby in the Blemmings Labs post-talk Q&A channel on Venulus. Next is a afternoon tea break, and please join us back here at 3:45 for the next talk, which is about large virtual address support in ARM64 kernel by Bhupesh Sharma. And thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Pierre.